More people were murdered in the Birkenau camp than in any other place in human history. For most of the history of the camp, there was no position of commandant. However, for a period in 1943 to 1944, there were two commandants. In this video, I shall talk about Friedrich Hartjenstein, who was in charge at Birkenau up until the moment when the mass deportation started from Hungary, which took Birkenau through its deadliest phase. Friedrich Hartjenstein was born the 3rd of July 1905 in Peine. His father was a cobbler. Hartjenstein started work in 1921 as an agricultural labourer whilst doing evening classes in Hanover. However, working on a farm did not appeal to him at the time of rural crisis. In December 1926 he entered the army and he stayed there for the next 12 years, reaching the rank of senior sergeant. In 1938 he got a job as an instructor with the SS-Verfügungstruppe, SS Disposal Troops, a barracked paramilitary unit of the SS, which alongside the Leibstandarte SS Adolf Hitler and the SS Totenkopfverbande was later to form the core of what was to become the Waffen-SS. In July 1939 he switched to the SS Totenkopf with the SS number 327350. Hartjenstein was thus assigned to the 2nd SS Totenkopf Regiment Brandenburg in Oranienburg. He rose to Obersturmführer there in a few months. The castle at Wewelsburg is located near Paderborn, and Himmler saw it as having some kind of mystical significance as well as being the centre of the world. It was a location where SS meetings and ceremonies were held. It was the location of where the rings of killed SS officers were kept. In order to look after it and for construction work, a sub-camp of Sachsenhausen concentration camp was created here. Today, little remains of the prisoner barracks, although the castle itself is much as Himmler would have remembered it. Hartjenstein was placed here as leader of the guard company. In early January 1941, he transferred back to the SS Totenkopf division. The division was then in France, but in early June 1941, it was transferred to Marienwerder, today Malbork, near Gdansk. Just before the invasion of the Soviet Union, it was moved to a staging area near Insterburg and was assigned to Panzer Group 4. Shortly before the beginning of the Nazi attack on the Soviet Union, it had a strength of 17,400 soldiers.
In den frühen Morgenstunden des 22. Juni trat die deutsche Wehrmacht in breiter Front zum Angriff an, die heimtückische Bedrohung des Reiches und Europas durch die bolschewistischen Verräter abzuschlagen. Diese Bilder zeigen Ausschnitte aus dem feigen Überfall der sowjetischen Machthaber gegen das kleine, tapfere Finnenvolk im Spätherbst 1939.
It crossed the German-Soviet border near Hasselberg on the 24th of June 1941 and eliminated points of resistance against scattered Soviet troops in Lithuania. On the 6th of July 1941, the unit forced the river Donau at Dünaberg. It reached the Stalin Line on the 9th of July 1941. During the battles for the Stalin Line, the divisional commander Theodor Eicke was wounded in the right foot when his command vehicle hit a landmine, and as a top Nazi official he was flown to Berlin. In the first 3 weeks of the invasion of the Soviet Union, the division suffered heavy losses. From the 24th of June 1941 to the 11th of July 1941, the number of soldiers killed, missing or wounded was 1,700. That's around 10% of its entire strength lost in the first 3 weeks of the war. By the 12th of July 1941, the division had advanced as far north as Utorsk near Lake Ilmen. Here, Soviet resistance stiffened and the unit was unable to proceed any further. On the 16th of August 1941, the division was assigned to the 16th Army and transferred to Dinant. From there, it slowly advanced into Demyansk, which it captured on the 24th of October 1941. The Totenkopf division found itself in a swampy area for which the well-motorised unit was hardly suited. This was as far as it got. The German offensive came to a halt east of Demyansk.
Über den Polarfluss, der von Süden her in den Ilmensee fließt. Hier trägt die harte Ausbildung der deutschen Kraftfahrer ihre Früchte.
Together with other parts of the 16th Army, the Totenkopf division was surrounded in January 1942. Whereas the soldiers of the Totenkopf division were far better protected than those of the Wehrmacht against temperatures of up to 40 degrees below zero, they still suffered. Theodor Eicke had received large quantities of winter clothing from the higher SS and police leader in Riga, Friedrich Hartjenstein. The clothing came partly from SS stocks and partly from the possessions of Jews who had been murdered in the Latvian capital. During the Battle of Demyansk, Hartjenstein was wounded. On recovery, as he was no longer fit for military service, he was transferred to the Auschwitz concentration camp in September 1942, where he was in charge of a guard company to perform a similar task to that had already done in Wewelsburg. In November 1943, Obergruppenführer Oswald Perl, as head of the SS Economic and Administrative Main Office, WVHA, divided up central command of the Auschwitz concentration camp. In this context, on the 10th of November 1943, Commandant Rudolf Höss was entrusted with managing the business of Amtsgruppe D in the SS Economic and Administrative Main Office and was called to Berlin for this purpose. In his place, Arthur Liebenhenschel succeeded Rudolf Höss as camp commandant at Auschwitz on the 11th of November 1943. On the 22nd of November 1943, he appointed Hartjenstein as camp commandant at Birkenau. In May 1944, Oswald Perl ordered a change in the camp commanders employed in the Auschwitz concentration camp complex, and at the same time appointed Höss as site senior at Auschwitz. In this function, he organised the so-called Hungarian action, the mass murder of the Hungarian Jews. Rudolf Höss thought that Hartjenstein had failed as commander and arranged for a commandant swap, whereby Josef Kramer, who was then commandant at the Natzweiler concentration camp, was sent to Birkenau, whilst Hartjenstein took over his job at Natzweiler. Hartjenstein stayed there until the end of February 1945. After the main camp was relocated to Guttenbach, Birkenau, in the Neckar Valley in November 1944, he was responsible for the additional satellite camps built around the Neckarelz concentration camp on the right bank of the Rhine from September 1944. Numerous murders took place at Natzweiler under Hartjenstein's leadership. After the end of his work as a concentration camp commander, Hartjenstein changed to an SS training regiment at the Putlost military training area. From the 8th of March to the 23rd of April 1945, he was at the training centre of the SS tank troops in Bergen. Whereas the Western military legal system didn't take much interest in the mass killings in the East, it hunted down those Nazi criminals responsible for killing Allied prisoners. Hartjenstein was one of them. Below you'll find links to 2 legal cases where he was a defendant. See the description. One refers to the murder of 4 women who were members of the British Special Operations Executive. They worked with the French resistance and were arrested between June and November 1943 in Dijon and Paris. From Paris they were sent to the women's prison in Karlsruhe, and from there they went to Natzweiler Struthof, where they were murdered with phenol injections on the 6th of July 1944. Their bodies were burned in a crematorium. For this, Hartjenstein was sentenced to life imprisonment by a British military court in Wuppertal held from the 29th of May to the 1st of June 1946. However, in a second trial, he was sentenced to death. Frederick Harold Habgood was a sergeant bombardier on an RAF bomber which was brought down. Of the crew of 7, he had attempted to evade capture but was found in a barn after around 2 days. He was brought to Natzweiler, forced to strip in the crematorium where he was slowly hanged, dying of suffocation, spending at least 10 minutes fighting for his life. Despite this death sentence, Hartjenstein was extradited to France, where he was tried for more crimes committed at Natzweiler. On the 2nd of July 1954, he was condemned to death again. Hartjenstein suffered from bladder cancer. On the 25th of September 1954, he was transferred to the hospital in Fresnes prison, a location through which many members of the French resistance passed on their way to Nazi concentration camps. Entering the terminal phase of the disease, he was temporarily liberated on the 20th of October 1954. On that day, he suffered a heart attack and was taken to the Saint-Jean-de-Dieu hospital in Paris, where he died almost immediately. I hope you found that interesting. I have done a number of biographies on lesser known Nazis, and if this is the sort of thing that intrigues you, then you might want to subscribe. I upload every Friday at 2000 hours my time. I'm in either Poland or in Germany, and so that time of course will change in different places. I also upload on other days sometimes as well, so if you want to know when I'm uploading, then the best way to do it is to subscribe. But for the moment, thanks very much for listening, and all the best from me in Germany.